Hello, cycle conscious woman, and welcome to this experience. This experience where the goal is for you to decode the mystery of your unique and beautiful cycle. Thank you for being here. So, cycle awareness matters. You matter, but you clearly already knew that, and that's why you're here. Cycle charting will give you the freedom and power to understand your body, to gain fertility freedom and improve your overall health through simply listening. So now let's optimize your charting so that you could gain even deeper insights and awareness. So today's session one roadmap is going to look like this. First, we're going to do a review and refresher of body literacy. So going over the anatomy and physiology of the female reproductive system. We're also going to talk about why cycle charting is the ultimate wellness tool. And then we're going to get right into charting. So the goal today is that you leave here having the ability to take action. I want you to start charting as soon as possible because we cannot know what's going on unless you put something on your chart. So please try your best to do so after you watch this session. So we're going to talk about how to chart menstruation, how to chart cervical mucus, and how to chart basal body temperature. And then I want to give you a first cycle strategy for natural birth control. So, body literacy refresher, anatomy and physiology of the female reproductive system. So, here's your reproductive system from the front view and the side view. In case you didn't know, your bladder sits on top of your reproductive system, and your uterus actually curves slightly inward, essentially hugging over the bladder. So, here we have your two ovaries, two small ovular organs that hold all of your dormant eggs that you're born with. Then you have your fallopian tubes on either side leading from the ovaries into the uterus, which is the womb space. And the uterus is what the lining thickens of and then sheds, and that causes your period. And beneath the uterus, we have a narrow canal here. This is your cervix, and your cervix has things called cervical crypts within it that actually produce the different types of cervical mucus in response to changing hormone levels. So your cervix also has something called a cervical cap that sits at the bottom of your cervix. And this can actually be felt by inserting a clean finger into your vagina. It is what you think of as the end of your vagina. And you can actually get to know your cervix by feeling it and noticing how it changes throughout the cycle. And then beneath your cervix is your vagina, which thanks to gravity is where cervical mucus moves through and out of, allowing us to observe it. So your whole cycle actually happens because of a hormonal communication back and forth between your ovaries and your brain. Healthy hormone production leads to a healthy cycle, but when this hormonal communication is messed up in any way, it leads to an unhealthy cycle with a range of symptoms and confusion that leave women hating their bodies. But you don't have to hate your body, but you do have to listen to it so that you can understand what it's trying to tell you. So, as you could see from this image on the right, hormones from the brain signal to your ovaries to develop an egg and produce the hormones estrogen and progesterone. So it's a back and forth communication from brain to ovaries to brain to ovaries that dictates the cycle events. So keep in mind that each of these hormones must reach its proper sufficient amount in order to stimulate the release of the next hormone at play. So if one hormone doesn't reach its sufficient amount, it will not trigger the next hormone, and the whole entire cycle can get messed up. So this is really a domino effect, and if one domino isn't pushed, none of them are going to fall. And in order for your cycle to be healthy, in order to have a healthy ovulation and period, we need those dominoes to fall. So this right here is an image depicting the fluctuating hormone levels between the brain and the ovaries. So let me explain the top part first. So there's four main hormones that dictate your cycle: FSH and LH, which both come from the brain, and estrogen and progesterone, which both come from the ovary. So at the start of a new cycle, your brain releases the hormone FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. This stimulates a follicle in your ovary to begin to grow, and the egg inside of it begins to mature. As that egg matures, the ovary begins producing estrogen, which you see here by the blue line. It begins to rise in the first half of the cycle. As estrogen rises, the cervix is stimulated to produce fertile cervical mucus. And once estrogen reaches its peak, about the same time that the egg is fully mature in your ovary, it communicates back up to the brain and tells it to release the LH surge, luteinizing hormone, depicted here by the yellow line. This surge of LH from the brain is what actually causes the event of ovulation to occur, where the mature egg bursts through the cell wall of your ovary and is swept up into the fallopian tube. The LH surge not only causes the event of ovulation, but it also causes the follicle that was housing the egg, which is now gone and ovulated, to turn into something called the corpus luteum, which then produces progesterone for the second half of the cycle, depicted here by the gray line that is clearly dominant in the second half. And then at the end of a cycle, if that egg was not fertilized, all of these hormone levels drop and you bleed and the cycle starts again. So the next part of this image here, the circles that are growing, is the visual depiction of the follicle and the egg. So again, at the start of a cycle, your ovary hosts a lot of dormant follicles, and each cycle, one of those follicles is stimulated and begins to grow and ovulates an egg, or attempts to ovulate an egg at least. So as that follicle grows, the egg inside of it matures. As that's happening, estrogen is starting to be produced by the ovary. And then in the middle there, you see the event of ovulation. The egg is bursting through the ovary, leaving the follicle behind, which turns into something called the corpus luteum, depicted by the gray circles on the right side. And that produces progesterone for the rest of the cycle. And on the bottom, this is a visual depiction of what a part of your charting will look like. So as you can presume, the red is bleeding, and then the gray area in the first half of the cycle is a dry, non-fertile phase before the fertile window opens up, depicted by the light and dark blue. And then in the second half of the cycle, we go back to a dry, infertile period. Your cycle might not look exactly like this. This is just an example of a healthy cycle. And we're going to learn all about what these colors and symbols mean in a little bit. So now let's just take a zoomed in lens of what we just talked about from the ovary. So we're just zoomed in on one ovary. And fun fact, ovulation happens from both ovaries. And as far as scientific research can tell, it's actually quite a random decision of which ovary, I should say, is ovulating an egg that cycle. So zoomed in on one ovary, we have the timeline of the follicle going from dormant at the start of a new cycle and then to being stimulated and growing. The egg inside of it is maturing. And then once estrogen reaches its peak while the egg is fully mature, the ovary communicates to the brain to release the LH surge, and that is what causes the event of ovulation. As you see here, the egg is bursting through the cell wall of the ovary and being swept out into the fallopian tube. The follicle that was housing and protecting that egg transforms into the corpus luteum, which produces progesterone for the second half of the cycle. So, cycle charting is the ultimate wellness tool. Every woman, in my opinion, should at least be aware that she has the option to do this. That she has the option to collect data that her body provides to her easily every day and utilize it to understand herself on a much deeper level. So, two main reasons cycle charting is the ultimate wellness tool. One, it allows you to identify your fertile window. This gives you full fertility freedom. No more fear, no more pills, no more patches, no more IUDs, no more things that we know harm our body, but we cling to out of lack of choices, lack of understanding. Full fertility freedom can be met because you are not fertile every single day. There is a window, and you are able to know when that window opens and closes with the right education, which I will provide you in this program. And when you have full fertility freedom, you could avoid or achieve pregnancy on your own terms without sacrificing ovulation, which is the fifth vital sign for women. And then beyond just fertility, because I always say you don't have to want to be a mom someday to understand your cycle and yourself. This is for any woman, any woman. And each chart is a health checkpoint. Each period is a health report card. So even if you're not even sexually active right now, cycle charting is beneficial and valuable to you because each cycle gives you a deep look at your overall health. And you could learn to know the signs of wellness for yourself so that you could take better care of yourself, so that you could become aware of patterns that happen every cycle that aren't serving you, and so that you can make space for change because you're aware. So, simply put, your body gives you signals every day. They tell you if you are fertile or not, and they tell you if you are healthy or not. The messed up part is nobody ever told the majority of women that we receive signals from our body every day, that we receive literal life markers from our body every day. And when a woman goes her whole life without understanding these signals, she may believe her body hates her. She's cursed. She's broken. Her genetics suck. There's nothing she could do. She's stuck. But that's the thing. You're never stuck. And seeing things through a different lens, through a cyclical lens, will help you realize that because you are a cyclical being. You are ever changing. And when you're not aware of that, life can feel like a crazy roller coaster ride. But when you are aware of that, it could feel more like you're sailing through the waves. And sometimes it's stormy, sometimes it's calm, but you know you have the skills to navigate those waters no matter what you're flowing through. And that's why you're here, to gain those skills, to become the captain of your own life.